Hi, I'm Dr. Cher Beauvais, and I'm going to talk to you today about one of the key principles in what I call the principles of body freedom. Body freedom is achieving a body that you feel great in, having freedom in the mind in terms of your relationship with food, in terms of not always having to think about weight and food and everything that encompasses, and freedom in your lifestyle where you've found that sweet spot where you can eat well, you've got your routines down, you feel great, and you have some flexibility. That's the lifestyle. So that's freedom in your body. In order to get to that level, to have that point of your lifestyle with, freedom in your body, mind, and lifestyle, to reach that really takes there's 5 principles that are necessary in the process of losing weight. And when you lose weight, implementing these 5 principles, then they're also going to set you up to be able to keep the weight off and have this flexibility in your lifestyle and the freedom in your mind. And so I'm going to share a story with you, a client of mine. Then I think her story really demonstrates particularly the significance of one of the principles, which I'll talk about in a second. And I'm going to name her Wonder Woman because she is a Wonder Woman. She is somebody, when she came to me, she'd been working at an executive level for several years, and it was very demanding. There's a part of her that was, because it had been newer to her initially, trying to prove herself. So she found that, working hard, loved her work, but nonetheless didn't have any boundaries, was trying to prove herself. And this had just become a way of being over the years. So between taking care of a family, the demanding career, all of this, her own self-care just kept getting pushed further and further away. And to the point that often finding, lunch just wouldn't happen because meetings would get booked. So she'd go through the day, no breaks, no lunch. And then at the end of the day, she'd be eating on what was ever available, grabbing whatever. Of course, sweets were, something that she went for. Dinners weren't necessarily all that well planned. It was like, okay, what's available? Let's just grab and go and pull it, just see what we can throw on the table. And this was a big problem, right? This was a lot of what led to her gaining the weight over the years because as she would say, her work-life balance was just totally off. So when she came to me, she knew she needed to lose about 60 pounds, but she just found it was that lack of balance. It was the lack of consistency, therefore not getting results, really wanting to lose weight, being very dedicated, and very actually a self-disciplined person in many ways in her life. Just this area was just not, she just didn't have the consistency in the routines that she needed to get the momentum, to get the results. And it was also part of her own sense of, I want to say self-worth. That's not really the right word, but self-worth in terms of her own self-care. Anyway, so the result was she was carrying extra 50, 60 pounds. She found it was actually impacting her confidence because, she just was feeling more and more self-conscious of her looks, didn't feel very professional. She had an amazing professional wardrobe, couldn't get into any of it, so that didn't help how she was feeling. Even to the point going out wasn't as much fun, right? Because you get dressed up and just not happy with it. And she just suddenly thought, this is it. I can't go on like this. And she just knew it was also going to have implications, potentially for health. She was in her early 50s. So you can only get away with this for so long. And then you also start to get the health issues coming into play. So with her, as she started on the program, the biggest thing we focused on was, I'm not going to get into the details of why it was so effective for weight loss, but in terms of one of the key principles, one of them is routines, having sustainable routines. Obviously, she had no routines when it came to her self-care, when it came to her food. And so this was something that we worked on as she was going through the program, was just number one, being able to prioritize herself so she could get into some routines, meaning block some time off for lunch. Guess what? She did that. And the company didn't go bankrupt. It carried on. It wasn't a big deal. And it was just her getting comfortable enough to set some pretty small boundaries, really, but they were significant for her. And that now this meant she was getting into routine. She was taking some time for lunch, getting into routines in terms of thinking about the food, planning the food, prepping the food, all of that, which sounds a bit cumbersome. But the thing is, particularly with the method I use, it's actually very simple. It's straightforward in terms of what's required, so it's not too complicated. Because if she tried a method that was very complicated, it probably would have been much harder for her to stick with. So this way she was able to kind of follow through on it. It was simple enough. She could integrate it into her very busy lifestyle, create some boundaries. So that's why I was supporting her, right? To create boundaries and whatnot. So she could follow through on her planning and whatnot and meal plans. And then the other part of it was because the program itself, and really it's something anybody should consider, it's using her own food. She'd done programs in the past where it was drinking a lot of shakes. Yes, she lost weight, but she had no intention on living on those shakes. So what happened once, she was trying to go back to her own food? Well, she didn't have the routines. She wasn't setting her boundaries. Didn't have a simplified kind of approach using her own food. Therefore, boom, weight came back on. So this is demonstrating the importance of routines and creating the routines, choosing a way to lose weight where you can create routines that are sustainable. For the actual, while you're losing weight, but they need to transition into what will become a lifestyle. Not to say that you need to eat in a rigid way forever. That's not body freedom. Remember, I said freedom in the lifestyle, but you've got a foundation. Because what happens is you create these routines, just like Wonder Woman did. Creates them, it becomes, over time, it's just second nature. And guess that's less decisions, it's easier, a lot less thought has to go into it. You've got it. Just like how you probably have your morning routine when you get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you get your coffee, whatever it is that you do. You don't have to think about it and plan and prep and make an agenda. You just do it. Likewise, it's getting to that point. So this is why, as part of when looking at weight loss, one of the key principles is having and creating sustainable routines that are going to work for you in your lifestyle. So this is what she was able to do. So it was the mental side of it, the mindset in terms of her commitment to doing this and her sense of self-worth and self-care, and then having the strategies and support, but the strategies to kind of be able for her to be able to do this. So now she can slide into a very simple way to kind of maintain her weight. And the results were fantastic. I mean, she dropped 57 pounds, and she did the program itself is 10 weeks. So she did 10 weeks, break for 4 weeks, then another 10 weeks. And it was 11 inches off the waist, 8 inches off her hips. So very healthy, got great results, but almost just as importantly is now she's created these routines so she can sustain it. She's going to be able to maintain it with ease. It'll be very simple. And so, she's off to the races, so to speak. So just remember that, the importance, one of the key principles of the 5 is routines. So whatever you do when you're looking for weight loss, you need to make sure that somehow that's going to be encompassed in it, and it will transition into maintenance after you reach your weight loss goals. Okay, great. Well, thank you. And I will be back again talking about another success story that's going to relate to another one of the principles. So stay tuned. Take care.